I still remember the smell of sawdust and fresh lumber from when I was a kid. Our family hardware store was my second home. My grandfather built it from nothing back in 1963, and my father kept it alive. I spent every summer since I was 12 years old working there, learning every single thing about the business. I always believed that one day it would be mine. But I did not know that my parents had already chosen someone else. Before we get into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you enjoy stories about family betrayal and rising from the ashes, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, let me tell you what happened when I realized my trust had been misplaced for 20 years. Our store was called Patterson Hardware and Supply. My grandfather, Richard Patterson, opened it in 1963 in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. He started with just a few $100s and a dream to build something that would last for generations. When he passed away, my father, Harold, took over, and when I came along, I thought I knew exactly where my future was headed. My name is Eddie, and I am the oldest son. My brother Derek is 4 years younger than me. From the very beginning, we were different. When I was 12 years old, I started working at the store every summer. I did not get paid. I did not ask to get paid. I thought of it as my responsibility, my training for the day I would take over. I learned how to count inventory, how to talk to customers, how to negotiate with suppliers. By the time I was 16, I could run the front counter better than most of the adult employees. Derek, on the other hand, never showed any interest. When our father asked him to help, he always had an excuse. He was tired, he had homework, he wanted to hang out with his friends. Our parents never pushed him. They always said he was different, that he needed to find his own path. I did not think much of it back then. I figured he was just a kid who did not know what he wanted yet. I went to college and studied business administration. I graduated with honors and had several job offers from companies in Cleveland and Cincinnati. Some of them were offering salaries that would have changed my life, but I turned them all down. I came back home and started working at Patterson Hardware full-time. I was 22 years old, and I was ready to prove myself. Over the next 10 years, I poured everything I had into that store. I modernized our inventory system. I built relationships with new suppliers who gave us better prices. I convinced my father to expand our product line to include power tools and outdoor equipment. When I started, our annual revenue was around $400,000. By the time I was 30, we were bringing in over $1.2 million. I was proud of what I had built. I thought my parents were proud too. Meanwhile, Derek graduated with a degree in communications. He bounced from job to job, never staying anywhere longer than a year. He worked at a radio station, then a marketing agency, then tried to become a social media influencer. Nothing stuck. But our parents never criticized him. They always said he was still figuring things out, that he was creative and needed room to explore. When Derek was 25, he came to our parents with an idea. He wanted to open a bar downtown. He had no experience in the restaurant industry, no business plan, nothing but enthusiasm. Our parents gave him $50,000 without hesitation. I remember sitting at the dinner table when they announced it, feeling something twist in my stomach. When I had proposed expanding the store 2 years earlier, complete with market research and financial projections, my father had barely looked at my proposal before saying he would think about it. He never brought it up again. Derek's bar failed in 8 months. $50,000 gone. Our parents never mentioned it again. It was like it never happened. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself that Derek needed more help than I did, that my parents were just trying to give him a fair chance. I buried my resentment and kept working. I was 32 years old. I had given 14 years of my life to that store. I had sacrificed relationships, vacations, and opportunities because I believed in our family business. I believed in loyalty. Then came the dinner that changed everything. My father was 63 years old and starting to slow down. He had been talking about retirement for a few years, and I knew the time was coming. I had already started preparing transition plans, thinking about how I would run the store once he stepped back. My wife Sarah and I had even discussed whether we should buy a bigger house closer to the store. It was a Sunday evening in October. My parents invited the whole family over for dinner. Sarah and I arrived first. Derek showed up late as usual, but my parents did not seem to mind. We ate pot roast and mashed potatoes, making small talk about the weather and local news. I could tell my father had something on his mind, but I did not push. After dessert, my father stood up. He thanked everyone for coming. He talked about how much the store meant to him, how it was his father's legacy and now his own. He said he was ready to retire and enjoy his remaining years with my mother. Then he looked at me and smiled. For a moment, I thought this was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for my entire life. My father said he appreciated everything I had done for the business. He said I was a hard worker and that the store would not be where it was without me. I felt my chest swell with pride. Then he said the words that shattered everything. He said he had decided to give the store to Derek. He said Derek needed an opportunity to prove himself, to find his purpose. He said I was already successful and could get a job anywhere, but Derek needed the store more than I did. I sat there, frozen. I looked at my mother, hoping she would say something, hoping this was some kind of joke. But she just nodded and smiled at Derek. Derek grinned at me from across the table. He actually had the nerve to say not to worry, that he would keep a management position open for me. I do not remember much of the rest of that dinner. I know Sarah held my hand under the table. I know I did not yell or argue or make a scene. I just sat there trying to process what had just happened. 14 years of my life. 14 years of dedication and sacrifice. And in one moment, it all meant nothing. That night, Sarah and I drove home in silence. When we got inside, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall for hours. I could not sleep. I kept replaying my father's words in my head, trying to find some logic, some justification. But there was none. The only conclusion I could reach was that my parents had never seen me the way I thought they did. To them, I was not the heir to the family legacy. I was just the reliable one, the one who would always be fine, the one they did not have to worry about. I wish I could say I walked away immediately, but I did not. Even after everything, I still believed that maybe my parents had a point. Maybe Derek really did need this opportunity. Maybe if I helped him get started, he would grow into the role and prove everyone right. So I stayed. I told myself I would give it 6 months. I would train Derek on everything he needed to know, set him up for success, and then figure out my next move. I thought I was being mature. I thought I was being a good brother. The first few weeks were tolerable. Derek showed up to work most days, though rarely on time. He sat in meetings and nodded along while I explained our supplier relationships, our pricing strategies, our customer service protocols. He took notes, or at least pretended to. I thought maybe he was actually trying. Then I started noticing things. Derek would disappear for hours during the workday, claiming he was meeting with potential partners or scouting new locations for expansion. But I never saw any evidence of these meetings. No follow-up emails, no business cards, no proposals. When I asked him about it, he got defensive and told me he did not need to report to me anymore. He started making changes without consulting anyone. He fired 2 of our longest tenured employees because he said they were too old-fashioned. These were men who had worked for my father for over 20 years, men who knew our customers by name and could troubleshoot any problem. Derek replaced them with his friends, from college guys who knew nothing about hardware and spent most of their time scrolling on their phones. Then he changed our suppliers. We had been working with the same lumber company for 15 years. They gave us excellent prices and reliable delivery because of the relationship I had built with them. Derek cut ties with them and signed a contract with a new company that offered him a kickback on every order. The wood quality was worse. Deliveries were late. Customers started complaining. When I tried to talk to him about it, he laughed at me. He said I was stuck in the past, that he was bringing fresh ideas to the business. He said I needed to learn to adapt or get out of the way. The humiliation got worse. One day, I arrived at work to find that my office had been moved. Derek had taken over my space and relocated me to a small desk in the back storage area. When I confronted him, he shrugged and said he needed a bigger office for his vision. He said I should be grateful I still had a job. A few weeks later, I received an email from Human Resources. Human Resources was Derek's college roommate, by the way. The email informed me that my title had been changed from operations manager to senior advisor, and my salary had been reduced by 20%. The reason given was company restructuring. I called my father. I thought surely he would see how wrong this was, how Derek was destroying everything we had built. But my father's response was cold. He told me that Derek was the owner now, and I needed to respect his decisions. He said if I could not get on board, maybe it was time for me to move on. My mother called me separately. Her voice was soft, almost sympathetic, but her words were not. She said I was the older brother and I needed to be the bigger person. She said Derek was finally finding his confidence and I should not undermine him. She said family is about sacrifice. That word hit me like a punch to the stomach. Sacrifice. As if I had not sacrificed enough. The final straw came on a Tuesday morning. I walked into the store to find a company-wide meeting already in progress in the main warehouse. Nobody had told me about it. Derek was standing on a platform giving a speech about the new direction of Patterson Hardware. He talked about rebranding, about targeting younger customers, about cutting costs. The employees listened quietly, many of them looking uncomfortable. I stood in the back, watching. Derek never acknowledged me. It was like I did not exist. After the meeting, one of the old-timers, a man named George, who had worked with my grandfather, pulled me aside. He said he was sorry. He said he did not know what had happened to the Patterson family, but this was not the store he had devoted his life to anymore. He was putting in his 2 weeks' notice. That night, I went home and told Sarah everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she took my hands and looked me in the eyes. She said she had seen this coming for a long time, but she wanted me to realize it on my own. She said my family did not deserve me. She said it was time to stop giving pieces of myself to people who would never appreciate them. The next morning, I wrote my resignation letter. I kept it professional. I thanked Derek for the opportunity, wished the company success, and said I was pursuing other ventures. I sent it to Derek and I copied my parents. Derek never responded, not even a single word. My father called that evening. His voice was harsh, accusatory. He said I was being impulsive and emotional. He said I would regret walking away from the family. He said I would never make it on my own because I had always had Patterson hardware to fall back on. Then he hung up. My mother sent a text message. It said I had disappointed her. That was all. For the next 3 months, I was lost. I sent out over 50 job applications. Most companies did not even respond. The ones that did said I was overqualified or too specialized. The job market was tough, and my entire career had been built around a family business that no longer wanted me. Our savings dwindled. Sarah and I cut every expense we could. We stopped eating out. We canceled our subscriptions. We sold some furniture we did not need. I started having trouble sleeping. Some days I could barely get out of bed. I felt like a failure, like everything I'd worked for meant nothing. Then Marcus showed up. Marcus had been my best friend since college. We had drifted apart over the years because I was always working at the store, but he never forgot about me. He worked in real estate development and had done well for himself. When he heard what happened, he drove 3 hours to see me. We sat in my garage drinking cheap beer, and I told him everything. He listened, asked questions, and then got quiet for a while. Finally, he looked at me and said something that changed my life. He asked me why I was sending out resumes when I knew more about the hardware supply business than anyone he had ever met. He said I should stop trying to work for someone else and start working for myself. He said he believed in me even if my family did not. I looked at him and felt something I had not felt in months. Hope. Starting a business with $3,000 in your bank account is not glamorous. There are no inspirational montages, no sudden breakthroughs. There is just work, doubt, and more work. Marcus invested $20,000 to get us started. I put in everything I knew, which was 14 years of relationships, strategies, and lessons learned the hard way. We set up our headquarters in my garage. Sarah helped with bookkeeping after her regular job. Most nights, I worked until 2 or 3 in the morning, then woke up at 6 to start again. We called the company Patterson Brothers Supply. Some people thought the name was strange since Derek was not involved, but that was exactly the point. I wanted the name to remind me every single day of what I was building and why. Our first service was consulting. I reached out to small contractors and builders in the area offering to help them source materials at better prices. I knew every supplier in a 100-mile radius. I knew who delivered on time, who cut corners, and who would negotiate if you bought in bulk. That knowledge was worth money, and slowly people started paying for it. The first 6 months were brutal. There were weeks when we barely had any clients. Marcus and I had long conversations about whether we should give up. Sarah never wavered, but I could see the worry in her eyes when she looked at our bank statements. Then something shifted. One of my early clients, a contractor named David, who was building custom homes in the suburbs, recommended me to 3 of his colleagues. Those 3 recommended me to others. Word spread that there was a guy who knew the hardware supply business inside and out, who answered his phone at all hours, who actually cared about helping you succeed. By the end of year 1, we had enough clients to hire our first employee. By the end of year 2, we had pivoted from consulting to direct supply. I reached out to my old supplier contacts, the ones Derek had abandoned, and they were thrilled to work with me again. Some of them gave me better terms than they had ever given Patterson Hardware because they trusted me personally. Year 3 was when everything changed. We opened our first physical location, a modest warehouse on the east side of town. I hired 15 employees, including George, the old-timer, who had quit Patterson Hardware. He became my operations manager and brought 3 other former Patterson employees with him. They said working for me felt like coming home. Our revenue that year was $1.8 million. I remember the exact number because I stared at it for a long time, thinking about how my father had told me I would never make it on my own. While I was building, Derek was destroying. I heard the updates through industry connections, former employees, and occasionally through suppliers who thought I should know. Derek had driven away most of Patterson Hardware's loyal customers with poor service and unreliable products. He had taken out loans to cover operating losses, using the store as collateral. When that was not enough, he convinced our parents to put up their house. 4 years after I left Patterson Hardware was $300,000 in debt. The store that my grandfather had built, that my father had maintained, that I had grown threefold, was dying, and there was nothing anyone could do to save it. Or so they thought. It was a Thursday evening in November when my mother appeared at my office. I was working late reviewing contracts for a new supplier partnership. My assistant had already gone home. When I saw her standing in the doorway, I almost did not recognize her. She looked 10 years older than the last time I had seen her. She sat down across from my desk and started crying. She said everything had fallen apart. She said Derek had made terrible decisions, and now they were going to lose everything. She said the bank was going to foreclose on the store and their house. She begged me to help. She said I was the only one who could save them. I sat there, listening, feeling emotions I could not name. Part of me wanted to comfort her. She was still my mother, despite everything. But another part of me remembered every moment of dismissal, every instance where she chose Derek over me every time she told me to be the bigger person, while Derek faced no consequences. My father called the next day. His voice was nothing like the harsh, confident tone I remembered. He sounded broken. He said he knew he had made mistakes. He said he was sorry for not believing in me. He asked me to put the past behind us and help the family. Even Derek reached out. He sent a text message saying he was willing to give me a share of the business if I would come back and fix things. No apology. No acknowledgement of how he had treated me. Just an offer, like I was a tool he could pick up whenever convenient. I spent a week thinking about what to do. Sarah and I talked for hours. She said she would support whatever decision I made, but she reminded me of who I was dealing with. She reminded me that these were the same people who had cast me aside without a second thought. In the end, I realized something important. If I saved them, nothing would change. Derek would learn that there were no real consequences for his actions. My parents would continue to enable him, and I would be right back where I started giving pieces of myself to people who would never value them. So I made my decision. I went to the post office and bought a padded envelope. I printed out a brochure from a small business loan service, the same one I had used when Marcus and I were starting out. I wrote a short note on a piece of paper. It said this was what I used to start over, and I wished them good luck. I mailed it to my parents' house. I never heard back from any of them. 3 months later, Patterson Hardware filed for bankruptcy. The store was sold to a competitor who gutted it and turned it into a garden center. My parents lost their house and moved into a small apartment on the other side of town. Derek eventually left Ohio and took a sales job somewhere in Texas. We have not spoken since. Some people might think I was cruel. Some people might say I should have helped, that family is family no matter what. But I learned a long time ago that blood does not automatically equal loyalty. Loyalty is earned through actions, not obligations, and my family had spent years showing me exactly how much my loyalty meant to them. The first year after Patterson Hardware closed was strange. I had won by any measure anyone could use. My company was thriving. We hit $5 million in revenue. We opened a second location. I was featured in a local business magazine as an entrepreneur to watch. But I did not feel victorious. I felt hollow. I started seeing a therapist, something I had always thought was for other people. But Sarah encouraged me, and I finally admitted I needed help processing everything that had happened. My therapist helped me understand that my entire identity had been built around proving myself to my parents. Every achievement, every sacrifice, every late night at the store had been motivated by a desperate need for their approval. When that approval never came, I did not know who I was anymore. It took time, but I started to heal. I learned that I was not responsible for my family's choices or their consequences. I learned that setting boundaries was not the same as being cruel. I learned that I could love people from a distance while still protecting myself from their harm. Sarah and I had our first child, a daughter. We named her Grace because she represented a new chapter, a fresh start filled with love that came without conditions. When I held her for the first time, I made a silent promise that I would never make her feel like she had to earn my love. 2 years after the bankruptcy, my mother reached out again. She did not ask for money. She said she just wanted to meet her granddaughter. After a lot of thought, I agreed. We set clear boundaries. We did not talk about the past. We did not talk about Derek or my father. She visited once a month and played with Grace in the backyard while Sarah and I watched from the kitchen window. My father never contacted me. I heard through my mother that his health was declining, but he was too proud to reach out. Part of me wished things could be different. Part of me mourned the relationship we never had, but I made peace with it. Some wounds do not heal completely. You just learn to live with the scars. I stepped back from the day-to-day operations of my company and hired a CEO to run things. I wanted to spend more time with Sarah and Grace to be present in a way my father never was for me. The business continued to grow, but it was no longer the center of my universe. It was just one part of a much fuller life. Looking back now, I understand that what happened to me was both a tragedy and a gift. I lost my family, or at least the idea of family I had always believed in, but I gained something more valuable. I gained freedom. Freedom from expectations that were never fair. Freedom from a role I never chose. Freedom to build a life on my own terms. If you are watching this and you see yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You do not have to keep sacrificing yourself for people who do not appreciate you. You do not have to stay in situations that diminish your worth. Walking away is not failure. Sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Family is important, but not everyone who shares your blood deserves a place in your life. Real family is built on mutual respect, support, and love that goes both ways. If you are not receiving that, you have every right to create your own family, your own support system, your own empire. And if anyone ever makes you feel like you are not enough, prove them wrong. Not for them, for yourself. I want to ask you something before you go. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect yourself? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I think there is power in knowing we are not alone in these experiences. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss more stories like this one. And remember, no matter what you're going through right now, you have the strength to build something better. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.